Human treated an alien girl without title or distance, and she realized it was the freedom she needed. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, back to our main character. Princess Zari had always been surrounded by grandeur and power. As a member of the royal family of the Tan Dominion, her world was filled with the constant pressure of expectations and obligations. Her days were meticulously planned, her every move scrutinized by those around her. Though she wore her title with pride, there was always an underlying emptiness, a longing for something she couldn't quite define. Her existence, though one of privilege, felt like a gilded cage. She could command armies, attend galas, and speak with the most powerful beings in the galaxy, but she had never felt truly free. Her personal life, her desires, her choices, they were all dictated by the expectations of her people and her family. Enter Commander Jack Harrison, a human security detail assigned to her during a diplomatic mission to Earth. Jack wasn't a royal, nor was he particularly renowned for anything beyond his dedication to his work. He was simply a man who did his job, without the fanfare, without the need for recognition. When they first met, Zari barely spared him a glance. He was just another member of the security team, another face in the crowd. But there was something about the way he carried himself, unassuming yet confident, that caught her attention. He treated her with the same respect he afforded everyone else, but without the unnecessary formality that surrounded her life. There was no "Your Majesty" in his words, no bowing at her feet. Jack was simply Jack. It was a stark contrast to the world she knew, where her title often came before her identity. At first, Zari was confused. Why didn't he treat her like the others? Why didn't he act like he was in awe of her status? As their time together grew, Zari began to realize something important. The lack of reverence, the absence of distance, was liberating. For the first time, she felt like she was being treated as an equal, as a person, not just a princess. Jack never asked anything from her, never expected anything in return for his help. He simply did his job, and in doing so, he unknowingly gave her the freedom she had always longed for. No longer did she have to live up to a title, to play the role of the perfect princess. With Jack, she could be herself, Zari, not Princess Zari. And in that simplicity, she found a sense of freedom she never thought possible. It wasn't the grandeur of her title or the power it afforded her that made her feel truly alive. It was the small, everyday moments of connection, of being treated as an individual rather than a symbol of power. The more time she spent with Jack, the more she realized that freedom wasn't something that could be handed to her by her royal family or her people. It was something she had to take for herself. And Jack, without ever intending to, had shown her the way. As the days passed, Zari found herself growing more and more accustomed to the quiet simplicity that Jack offered. Every morning, as the sun rose over the distant hills of the Earth countryside, she would step outside the modest quarters she had been given and find Jack already at work, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the rigid, high-stakes environment she was used to. There was no pomp, no circumstance, just Jack, doing his job. It was a refreshing change from the complex world of politics, alliances, and expectations that she had been born into. She had always known she was more than her title, but it wasn't until now that she truly began to feel it. The days she spent alongside Jack were filled with moments of normalcy. They would walk through the gardens of the estate, where Jack would patiently explain the simplest of Earth's wonders, things she had never noticed before. The way sunlight filtered through the leaves, the scent of the air after a light rain, the taste of food without the heavy influence of royal expectations. To Zari, these moments were priceless. Slowly, she started to see the world through a different lens. For the first time in her life, she was no longer expected to perform. She could simply exist, in a way that felt true to herself. But as she spent more time with Jack, something else began to stir inside her. It wasn't just his kindness or the ease with which he treated her. It was the way he made her feel seen, not for her position or her title, but for who she truly was. She was no longer just a princess. She was Zari, a person who could laugh, cry, and make mistakes without fear of her actions being scrutinized by the world. Jack's humility and lack of reverence allowed her to breathe freely in a way she hadn't before. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony, watching the stars twinkle in the vast night sky, Zari found herself speaking more openly than she had in years. She confessed her frustrations, the weight of being constantly watched, and how she longed to experience the world as everyone else did. Jack listened quietly, never interrupting, just allowing her words to flow. When she finished, he finally spoke, his voice low and steady. "You deserve to live freely, Zari," he said. His words simple, yet they carried a depth of understanding that took her by surprise. "I don't know what it's like to be you, but I know what it's like to want to be more than what others expect you to be." His words resonated deeply within her, and for the first time in a long while, she realized that Jack understood her in ways that no one else ever had. It was a small, quiet moment, but it was enough to shift something inside her. She no longer felt like she was just a pawn in the game of life, playing a role for the benefit of others. With Jack, she could be herself, unfiltered and free. As the evening wore on, Zari sat quietly, feeling the weight of her newfound sense of freedom. She knew she had a long road ahead of her. There would be challenges, expectations, and responsibilities that she couldn't avoid forever. But for now, in this moment, she had something she had never truly experienced before: peace. And it was all thanks to Jack, the human who had treated her with the dignity of a person, not a title. Days passed, and with each one, Zari felt herself evolving. The walls she had carefully built around her heart began to crumble, piece by piece. Every conversation with Jack, every shared moment of quiet, seemed to peel away the layers of royal expectations that had defined her existence for so long. It was during one of their walks through the estate that Zari realized just how far she had come. They walked side by side, the air crisp and cool against her skin. The estate, so lavish and grand, seemed almost like a dream in the distance, far removed from the ordinary world Jack came from. Yet, in his company, she no longer felt out of place. She felt normal. As they passed under a row of trees, Jack pointed out a particular flower, one she had never noticed before. "That's a hibiscus," he said, kneeling down to admire it. "They bloom at night, and they last for only a few hours." A brief moment of beauty. Zari watched as he carefully touched the petals, a genuine respect in his gesture. There was no formality, no distance between them. Just Jack, with his simple kindness, sharing a moment with her. "I didn't know flowers could be so short-lived," Zuri remarked, bending to examine the flower more closely. "It's strange, isn't it? To think something so beautiful can vanish so quickly." Jack stood, brushing the dirt off his knees, and smiled at her. "Yeah, but that's kind of the point. Beauty isn't about lasting forever. It's about the moments we have." Zari felt a strange sensation in her chest. She had never heard such a simple truth spoken so casually before. But in that moment, it resonated deeply within her. She had spent so much of her life chasing after things that were meant to last forever: the throne, her legacy, the expectations of her people. But maybe, just maybe, the most important things weren't meant to last. Maybe they were meant to be appreciated in the here and now. As they continued walking, Zari couldn't help but think about her time with Jack. He was teaching her more than just how to appreciate the small things in life. He was showing her how to live without the burden of her title, how to exist as a person, not a symbol. She had always been Princess Zari, a figurehead, a tool of diplomacy. But Jack didn't see her as a princess. He saw her as Zari, a woman with hopes, dreams, and desires just like anyone else. And as the days turned into weeks, Zari found herself changing. She began to smile more easily, laugh more freely, and speak her mind without the constant fear of being judged for what she said. One evening, as they sat on the porch of the estate, watching the stars above, Zari turned to Jack, her voice soft but steady. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" Jack asked, looking at her with those calm, kind eyes. "For showing me what it means to live. Not just to survive, but to truly live. You've given me something I didn't know I was missing." Jack gave a small, modest smile. "You're welcome, Zari. You deserve to know what that feels like." Zari took a deep breath, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She was beginning to understand what true freedom was. It wasn't about escaping responsibility or abandoning her people. It was about living on her own terms, finding joy in the small moments, and allowing herself to be human rather than just a title. And for the first time in her life, Zari felt ready to embrace that freedom, no matter where it might lead. As the days turned into weeks, Zari began to embrace the sense of freedom Jack had shown her. Her once tightly controlled world of royal duties and expectations began to feel distant. For the first time in her life, she could step outside her castle walls, both literal and metaphorical, and simply be. The shift was subtle at first. She found herself waking earlier each day, enjoying the quiet mornings when the world outside was still asleep. The estate's grounds, though vast and regal, became her sanctuary, a place where she could walk freely without the weight of her title pressing down on her. One afternoon, as they walked along a trail she had come to enjoy, Jack spoke about something he'd been working on in his free time, a simple project he'd started to help improve the estate's water system. He described the process in detail, explaining how he was creating a more efficient filtration system using basic tools and materials. Zari listened intently, fascinated by his practical knowledge. There was something so incredibly grounded about Jack. His hands, calloused from years of work, were the hands of someone who didn't wait for problems to solve themselves, but took action. "You make it sound so simple," Zari said, marveling at his ingenuity. Jack shrugged, a small grin tugging at his lips. "Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best." Zari chuckled, her eyes glinting with a new sense of ease. "I suppose I've spent so much time thinking things have to be complex because my world has always been so. But maybe it doesn't have to be that way." Jack met her gaze, his expression soft but serious. "Life doesn't have to be complicated, Zari. Sometimes, all you need is to focus on the basics, and everything else will fall into place." Zari nodded, feeling the weight of his words. It was as if a new understanding was unfolding within her. She had spent so long trying to fit herself into the rigid mold of royalty that she had forgotten what it felt like to simply live, to exist without a constant sense of duty hanging over her. But now, with Jack, she was beginning to learn that she didn't need to be defined by her title or her family's expectations. As the afternoon sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Zari realized just how much she had changed. Her life was no longer just about maintaining an image or playing a role. It was about finding her own path. And that path, for the first time, seemed to lead somewhere real, something she could call her own. The conversation drifted to other topics as they walked back to the estate. Zari found herself opening up to Jack in ways she hadn't with anyone before. She spoke about her childhood, the pressure of her position, and the loneliness that had often accompanied it. Jack, in turn, shared stories of his life back on Earth, his simple joys, and his own struggles. The more they talked, the more Zari realized just how much she had come to value Jack. Not for his position or his status, but for his kindness, his wisdom, and his unwavering support. That evening, as they sat down for dinner, Zari felt a sense of peace settle over her. She no longer saw herself as trapped by her royal duties. Instead, she felt empowered to make her own choices. She was no longer a princess living under the weight of a crown. She was Zari, a person with the freedom to choose who she wanted to be. And with Jack by her side, she knew she was finally free to start living on her own terms. As time passed, Zari's transformation became more evident, not just to herself, but to those around her. The pressure she had once felt to maintain the image of a perfect princess started to fade. Her days, once filled with endless meetings, endless appearances, and endless expectations, now held moments of peace and quiet reflection. With Jack by her side, she began to see a new way of living, one where she was not bound by her title or the rigid protocols of royalty. It was during one of their quiet walks, a routine they had fallen into, that Zari realized just how much Jack had influenced her life. They had walked down the same path countless times, but this time, there was a sense of finality in the air. Zari stopped for a moment, her gaze lingering on the horizon. "You know, Jack, I've been thinking," she began, her voice soft but clear. Jack, who had been walking a few steps ahead, stopped and turned to face her. "About what?" "About what it means to be free," she said, her eyes meeting his. "For the longest time, I thought I had everything. Power, influence, respect, But I was trapped, Jack. Trapped by my own sense of duty and the expectations that came with it. I didn't know what it meant to live until I met you. Jack's expression softened, his eyes searching hers. You always had the power, Zari. It just took someone else to help you see it. Zari smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. She had never felt so understood, so seen. It wasn't just about the freedom Jack had given her. It was about the realization that she could be more than just a princess. She could be Zari. She could live a life of her own choosing, without the weight of her title defining every step she took. The following days were filled with more conversations like that one. Conversations where Zari felt safe enough to express herself without fear of judgment. Jack never pressured her to reveal more than she was ready to share, but he was always there, always listening, always supporting her. And slowly, Zari began to make choices she had never allowed herself to before. One evening, as the two of them
sat under the stars, Zari turned to Jack with a question that had been on her mind for a while. Jack, what would it be like for you to live without all the responsibilities, the expectations, to be free like I am now? Jack leaned back, gazing at the sky above them. I think freedom is different for everyone, he said thoughtfully. For me, it's about having the space to do what I love, to help people in a way that feels right. But freedom doesn't always mean being free of responsibility. Sometimes, the things that give us purpose are the things that tie us down. It's finding balance that matters. Zari nodded, taking in his words. For the first time, she understood that freedom wasn't about running away from responsibility. It was about choosing what to carry with you and what to let go. And in that moment, she realized that Jack had helped her find that balance. He had shown her that true freedom wasn't about rejecting her past, but about embracing her future on her own terms. As they sat together, the cool night air surrounding them, Zari felt a deep sense of peace. She wasn't the princess who had to carry the weight of a kingdom anymore. She was Zari, a person who had learned to live for herself. And with Jack by her side, she knew she could face whatever came next. As weeks turned into months, Zari's life continued to shift in ways she never thought possible. The weight of her royal duties, which had once defined her every move, now felt like a distant memory. With Jack by her side, she began to experience the world in a completely new way. For the first time, she felt as though she was living, not just existing. One afternoon, Zari sat in the garden, enjoying the warm sunlight that bathed the estate. The breeze was soft, the scent of blooming flowers filled the air, and she felt at peace. Jack had been working on a small project nearby, but now, as he approached, she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. He had been working tirelessly, as he always did, ensuring everything ran smoothly. Zari, noticing his tiredness, smiled and stood up. You know, Jack, you should take a break every now and then, she said gently. Jack chuckled, wiping the sweat from his brow. I'm fine, Zari. There's always something to do. I understand, she replied, her smile widening. But sometimes, the best way to get things done is to rest and recharge. Jack raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by her suggestion. Zari laughed softly. It's just, I've been learning a lot from you. You've taught me that we don't always need to be busy to be productive. I've been so caught up in my responsibilities for so long that I forgot what it was like to simply enjoy life. Jack looked at her for a moment, his gaze softening. You're right, Zari. Maybe I could take a break. Just for a little while. The two of them spent the rest of the afternoon talking, laughing, and enjoying the quiet of the estate. It was a simple day, but it was one of the best they had shared together. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow across the garden, Zari felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, not just for the life she was building with Jack, but for the realization that she was finally living on her own terms that night. As they sat together, Zari couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. Jack, she said, her voice soft. I used to think that my title was everything. That it was the only thing that mattered. But now, I see that it was just one part of who I am. It doesn't define me. I'm more than just a princess. Jack nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. You've always been more than that, Zari. You just needed to realize it for yourself. Zari smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest, and I think I'm finally starting to. The next few days were filled with more moments of connection, more quiet walks and meaningful conversations. Zari's transformation wasn't just about shedding her title or her royal duties. It was about finding her own voice, her own sense of purpose. She realized that she had always been in control of her own destiny, even if she had never fully embraced it before. With Jack by her side, Zari felt ready to face whatever came next. She didn't need the trappings of royalty to feel powerful. She was powerful in her own right. And, for the first time, she felt free. As Zari settled more into her new life, she began to embrace the unfamiliar freedom that came with it. No longer confined by the heavy expectations of royalty, she felt a growing sense of autonomy. It was a feeling she had never known before, but one she was beginning to cherish more each day. Jack, ever the constant presence by her side, noticed the change. His quiet support, his unwavering presence, had given her the courage to step into this new chapter of her life. One morning, as they walked together under the vast blue sky, Zari turned to Jack with a question she had been pondering for some time. Jack, she began, her voice tentative yet filled with curiosity. What do you see when you look at me now? Not as a princess, but as me? Jack, who had been walking with his hands tucked into his jacket pockets, looked at her thoughtfully. It was a question he hadn't expected, but one he had already considered in his quiet moments. I see a person, he said simply. I see someone who's strong, someone who's been through a lot, and someone who's learning to be free. Zari stopped walking, her heart beating a little faster at his words. She had always been seen as a princess, a symbol of something far bigger than herself. But now, with Jack, she felt like she was finally seen as an individual. It was liberating. You've helped me more than you know, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I never thought I could escape the chains of my title. But you've shown me that it's possible to live outside of that. To be just Zari. Jack smiled, his expression warm and sincere. I've only shown you what you already had inside you, he replied. You've always been more than just a title. They continued walking in silence, each of them lost in their own thoughts. Zari's mind was racing, reflecting on how much she had grown over the past few months. She had learned to let go of the expectations placed on her, to embrace the simple joys of life that she had once overlooked. Her life with Jack was one of balance. A balance between the freedom she had found and the responsibility she still carried. As they reached a small clearing on the estate, Zari looked out at the horizon. The estate's sprawling gardens and ancient trees were a beautiful sight, but now, she saw them through a different lens. She no longer felt trapped within the walls of her own life. She felt a sense of ownership over her future, something she had never experienced before. I want to make a difference, she said quietly, more to herself than to Jack. I want to use the freedom I've found to help others, to make choices that matter. I want to be someone who isn't defined by the world around her, but by what she does. Jack's eyes lit up with pride. You already are that person, Zari, he said. It's just about taking the next step. Zari turned to face him, her expression filled with determination. Then I'll take that step, she said firmly. I'm ready. The days that followed were filled with new possibilities for Zari. She began exploring ways to help her people, using her newfound sense of autonomy to influence change. It wasn't easy, and there were obstacles along the way. but she felt more empowered than she ever had before. With Jack's support, she was no longer just a princess caught in a web of political obligations. She was Zari, a person with the power to shape her own future. And for the first time in her life, she truly felt free. As weeks went by, Zari felt the growing weight of her new responsibilities. She was no longer just a figurehead. She was a woman with a purpose. And her journey had only just begun. Jack, ever her steady companion, had been by her side through it all, helping her navigate this new chapter of her life. They spent long hours discussing plans, ideas, and the future. But even in the midst of these conversations, Zari found moments of clarity that were completely unexpected. One evening, while sitting on the balcony, Zari looked out over the sprawling gardens, her thoughts distant. Jack, who had been watching her silently, finally spoke. "You've been quiet lately," he said, his voice soft but knowing. "What's on your mind?" Zari turned to him, a slight frown creasing her forehead. "I've been thinking about how much I've changed, Jack, how much I've learned, but I'm still not sure where I truly belong. It's like I'm straddling two worlds now. One that I was born into, and one that I'm trying to create for myself. It's hard to reconcile the two sometimes." Jack nodded thoughtfully, understanding her struggle. He had seen her transformation firsthand and knew the depth of her internal conflict. "I get it," he said. "You've spent so much of your life being one thing, and now you're trying to be something else. It's not easy to just switch gears." Zari sighed, her shoulders heavy with the weight of her own doubts. "I don't want to disappoint anyone, Jack. I don't want to let go of who I am. But at the same time, I don't want to be trapped in a life I didn't choose." Jack's gaze softened as he looked at her, his words steady and reassuring. "You don't have to let go of who you are, Zari. You're not trapped. You're free to choose your path. It's just about finding the courage to take that first step. And I'm here with you every step of the way." Zari looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. She realized, in that moment, that she wasn't alone in this journey. She had Jack, a constant source of support, someone who believed in her even when she struggled to believe in herself. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Jack smiled, the warmth of his expression reaching her heart. "No thanks necessary," he replied. "You're stronger than you think. And you've already taken that first step." The following days brought new challenges, but Zari felt more confident in her decisions. She continued to work on her goals for the future, slowly weaving together the threads of her old life and the new one she was creating. She found herself spending more time with the people she was trying to help, working alongside them to create a better world, not just for her people, but for herself as well. As the sun began to set one evening, casting a golden light over the estate, Zari and Jack stood side by side, taking in the view. Zari felt a sense of peace settle over her, a feeling that had eluded her for so long. "I think I'm finally starting to understand," she said, her voice quiet but resolute. "That being free isn't about having everything in place. It's about knowing that, no matter where I am or what I'm doing it for me." Jack glanced at her, a proud smile crossing his face. "Exactly," he said, "and I'm proud of you, Zari. You've come a long way." Zari smiled back, her heart lighter than it had ever been. She didn't have all the answers, and she knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy. But for the first time in her life, she felt ready to face whatever came next. With Jack by her side, she knew she could handle anything. She had found her true freedom, and it was more than just a life without a crown. It was a life filled with purpose, with choices, and with the promise of something beautiful yet to come. As the months passed, Zari's sense of purpose deepened, and she found herself embracing a new rhythm in her life. The freedom she had discovered, once a distant dream, was now something tangible, Something real. With Jack's unwavering support, she had begun to take steps toward creating the kind of future she had always wanted. One not defined by her title or her royal lineage, but by her own choices. One afternoon, as the two of them sat together by the estate's tranquil pond, Zari looked at Jack, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Do you ever wonder what it would be like if things were different?" she asked, her voice soft. Jack, who had been skipping stones across the water, paused and glanced at her. "What do you mean?" "I mean, if we didn't have these expectations, these roles we're supposed to play. If I didn't have to be a princess. If you didn't have to be, well, just a soldier, a worker. If we could simply be ourselves, without any of the weight of duty or responsibility," Zari explained, her eyes searching the horizon. Jack thought for a moment, his gaze steady on the water. "I think that's what we're trying to do now, right? We're already living that way. Little by little. We're not stuck in those roles anymore." Zari smiled softly, but there was a trace of sadness in her eyes. "It's just hard to let go of everything. The past, the expectations. Even now, when I feel free, I still feel the pull of who I was supposed to be. I can't help but wonder if I'll ever truly escape it." Jack set down the stone he was holding and turned to face her fully. "Zari," he said gently, "you've already escaped it. It's not about being free from the past entirely. It's about choosing who you want to be moving forward. And you're doing that every day. You're not that princess anymore. Not in the way you used to be. You're Zari." Her heart swelled at his words. The weight of his unwavering belief in her settling deep within her chest. She realized that Jack was right. The past would always be a part of her, but it no longer had to control her. She was free, not because she had abandoned her royal identity, but because she had made peace with it. "You're right," she whispered, her voice filled with newfound clarity. "I don't have to be what everyone expects. I can be what I choose to be." Jack reached out and gently took her hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Exactly. And you've already started. The rest of the world will catch up eventually. But what matters is that you've found your own way." Zari looked at him, her heart full. "Thank you," she said quietly, knowing the words would never truly capture the depth of her gratitude. Jack smiled, his eyes soft. "You don't need to thank me. I've just been here, walking alongside you. You've always had everything you need inside you." The day stretched on, the peaceful quiet of the pond wrapping around them like a blanket. For the first time in her life, Zari felt truly at peace. She was no longer burdened by her past, nor was she defined by the expectations of others. She was free to write her own story, to create her own future. And as she sat there with Jack, the man who had helped her see the truth of who she was, she realized that her journey was just beginning. The world was open to her, and for the first time, she felt ready to step into it fully, without fear, without doubt. With Jack by her side, there was no limit to what she could accomplish, and she was determined to face whatever came next with the same courage and conviction that had brought her this far.